deal with it. Now, I'm willing to admit that I'm probably the only millennial out there who still uses a landline to this day. And I take no shame in that for two good reasons. One, for safety and security, those situations where I don't have a cell phone near me. And two, which is pretty much the main reason, I use this for work. This is my daily driver, Monday through Friday. I am not even joking with you. And sure, yeah, cell phones are nice and all, and like, you know, they're pretty much the universal replacement for landlines. And can you believe it? Reversey. You can play Reversey on this thing. Like, you can't play Reversey on this dumb old corded telephone. But y'all, I do too much on my cell phone for work. A lot of my testing and debugging takes place whenever I'm using my phone trying to help a client, or I'm running tests on their environment, or I'm doing tests on my test bench environment. It's just a lot, and getting a phone call while I'm doing that, it can be annoying. Now, Apple did make it better where they have the little banner that pops up on the screen so that it doesn't take over the entire phone screen, but even with that, it's kind of less than ideal, because if I'm trying to press something near the top of the screen, all of a sudden that banner pops up and then bam, the phone is full screen. That's not what I'm trying to do. Example, I'm talking with a client, so I have the phone running in the background and I'm doing something else on a different app. All of a sudden I get another phone call. That incoming call takes over my entire screen. Yeah, thanks Apple, you really thought that one through. I can hands down say it is a night and day difference being able to have dedicated devices solely for talking on the phone while doing other tasks on my iPhone. I simply set all of my calls to forward from here to these phones whenever I am sitting here at my desk. Same thing with like my Zoom meetings and WebEx meetings, I route them all through here. I just dial in. And like, you know, you could argue that like, hey, you have a perfectly working computer right here. You could just use your Zoom calls and WebEx calls for that. Yeah, you're right. And I have been doing that up until this point. What I find is that I have to do other things on the computer while the WebEx call or the Zoom call is going on. And so I have it minimized. Even when I have like a dual monitor setup, like I'm doing so many things on my screens. If I have to like minimize and I have to click through just to unmute my microphone for a few seconds to answer a question, that is incredibly annoying. On top of that, it's too much awkward silence because you can see me on camera as I'm trying to unmute my microphone and it looks rude in front of the people. So like, yeah, it's just, I hate having to scramble to unmute my mic. So being able to dial into those meetings using this phone and having a dedicated toggle mute button makes a world of a difference. It's like so much less distracting because I can keep the windows open on my screen and like my mind is incredibly one track. If even the simple act of me minimizing what I'm doing on my screen, it will completely throw me off and I'll have to regain my bearings and figure out where I left off. This alleviates that tremendously for me. This has been so useful to me that I decided to put two more of these phones downstairs. I mean, not this exact version, but a very similar version of it. And it's for those days where I just don't want to be here bound to my desk. I just grab my laptop, go downstairs, bam, I'm good to go. I can just chill at the couch. There's a phone right next to me, chilling in the living room. Or if I'm hungry, I want to sit in the kitchen. I got a phone in the kitchen right next to me. I am good to go. I am ready. And you know, you can even see with my list of extensions here, I've got phones in my bathrooms.
I have a phone in here.
Joey, promise me something.
Yeah.
Never call me from that phone.
Yeah, I know. Y'all can laugh at me now, but I swear, the day that I am taking a poo and I get that call on the radio for the phrase that pays, I will be ready and I'll be $1,000 richer. Occasionally, I will have friends and family visiting, spending the night. Sometimes it can be very impromptu. During that time, like during the day, I'll be upstairs in my office working here and they'll be downstairs doing their own thing, watching TV or TikToks, you know, whatever the cool kids do these days. You know, if I'm getting phone calls every 10, 15 minutes, I don't want them to have to hear every single phone in the house constantly ringing, nor do I want to have to go through the trouble of silencing the ringer on every single phone. Like, that's just tedious. So I simply have a button for that.
All calls are being taken by office extensions.
Bam. There you go, problem solved. And you know, if I have to step away from my desk for any reason, like for example, earlier, like if I said I wanted to work downstairs in the kitchen or the living room, just...
All calls are being taken by house extensions.
And that way, I will not miss a call. Also, fun fact, those voice recordings that you just heard, I did not have to pay for those at all. Those came preloaded with the free PBX system that I am currently running, which is incredible. It is such a great voice over IP system in my opinion. Completely free, open source, and in a nutshell, it's a CentOS-like operating system. It's made by a company called Sangoma, and it can be installed on virtually anything. If you have an old 64-bit computer lying around, install that on there, bam, that's your PBX. That's your virtual voice over IP server. Or, you know, if you want to like get it done right and make sure that it works, you could spend $700 on a pre-built version made by that same company. But, you know, I would only recommend doing something like that for scenarios where you're doing like a large deployment, where you're setting up more than 20 phones and like a bunch of other devices. It's just easier in that scenario to get the hardware that you know is going to work instead of experimenting like with older PCs and custom hardware. But yes, my system is a free PBX environment. I have a dedicated mini PC running the operating system. I have a total of 7 phones connected to it. Technically 8 because my bathroom is consistent of 2 phones and it just shares an extension. It's a split analog. And I have a voice over IP provider connected to the system. You would be surprised at how cheap voice over IP is compared to getting like a phone service from your internet service provider. With an ISP, you're probably gonna pay an extra $20, $30 a month for a phone line. And that's just one single line. And that's also including bundling with other services. So that's still pretty expensive because I can tell you right now, mine, it costs $24 a year. So that's $2 a month, unlimited calls to local numbers. And if I ever dial a long distance number, it costs me $0 and 0.05 cents per minute. That is nothing. It costs less than a penny. So it's to the point where I don't even care if my boss were to reimburse me for this because I use this primarily for work and like it's just a necessity in my life at this point. More about free PBX, there is a lot you can do with this. Like I showed you earlier, you can route calls to different locations, either with the press of a button, or you can even do it based on the time of day. You can put filters for private or blocked numbers so that they don't ring your phone at all. I actually have a short video on that, so I would suggest you go watch it. It's actually a very funny story. They also have what's called an IVR. Create your own custom menu where it's like press 1 for this, press 2 for that. So you can do your own recordings and make your own little interactive phone menu. And this one is my favorite. You can schedule wake-up calls.
Hello, this is your wake-up call. For a wake-up call, press 1.
I'm not going to schedule a wake-up call, but yeah, that's basically my alarm system. I have one of these phones, like this exact phone in my bedside in the master. So that's what I use as my morning alarm for waking up. It is so useful. And it's not easy to snooze like a regular alarm. It'll just keep ringing and ringing and ringing. And if you ignore it, it's just going to keep ringing and ringing. It'll never go to voicemail. So you are forced to get up. Oh, and a new-ish feature. I have yet to try this, but I'm very excited to implement this. You can add your Google contacts to the free PBX server. So like literally the same contacts that are on your iPhone or your Android, you can sync them to your voice over IP system so that when you receive a call on one of these phones, it'll show you the name that appears on your contacts list. Like that's incredible. But yeah, systems like this, they can also integrate with other video devices like video IP phones and video door station phones. So like if someone's at the door, you can get a call here and then use this to open the door. Because this is actually very common in my line of work. This is also a major reason why a lot of my clients still have a landline. They don't want to have to go looking for their cell phone just so they can simply buzz someone in at the gate or whatever. Some of them even upgraded to like better versions of these phones, like video-based versions of the phone, so they can actually see who is at the door or at the gate. And like, you know, I'd eventually like to get a setup like this. I currently have a Ring Elite doorbell. It's a PoE doorbell. It's nice, don't get me wrong, but I'm not entirely thrilled with it. It works good, but I don't like Amazon. I do not like the Ring app. I don't like having any Amazon devices sitting on my network whatsoever. Like, I'm not trying to give them any free analytical data. Like, you can go, whatever, Amazon. Go do whatever. But yes, I have a landline. I cannot tell you why, but I have just always been fascinated with telephones as a child. You ask my family how to summarize my interests as a kid, they will say 2 things: telephones and light switches. Plain and simple. But it's nice because, you know, I'm working with both of those things for a living, which makes work a lot of fun for me. And hey, if you're not enjoying what you're doing, then you're not doing it right. Pretty soon, I'm gonna have to retire these phones. Like, these are the Unify Open Stage series phones. It's a shame because they're not only discontinued, but they stopped making updates for them ever since 2019. And I just love these phones. I love them for the features, the aesthetic, like, it is the most elegant phone that I have ever seen, that I've ever used. And it's cool because it's got a little sensor for the hook. It's not an actual hook. It's like, it detects if something's there. There's no physical button. I think that's really cool and innovative. But yeah, like they're so elegant. They're German made. It was originally made by Siemens. I don't know if they're still part of this. It was taken over by a company called Unify, and now it's part of Mitel. I'm not sure if Siemens actually owns Unify, or like I don't know the whole story behind that. Yeah, magically one day the phone used to say Siemens as the branding logo, and then after I updated it, it said Unify. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. Before these, I actually used to use the Cisco phones. I had a bunch of 7962s. Those were cool, I guess. They just didn't look as nice as this. Ultimately, the biggest deterring factor for me, they were hard to program. So friggin' difficult. The phones, they run JavaScript. In order to just make one simple change, like if you wanted to add a speed dial to one of the physical hard keys, you had to modify a JSON file. You had to modify that using a text editor. You then had to put that file into a directory that was on a TFTP server, so like a trivial file transfer, and then you had to tell the phone to navigate to that TFTP server so that it can download the configuration. Too many steps, like just way too many steps, whereas this is just like, hey, I am phone. Simple. Like, I could just do everything from here. I can configure it from the settings, or even better, I could just pull up the IP address of this, log into it on my computer, and then just configure everything through the web interface. Like, it's just so much easier. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video.
And can you believe it? Reverse